If you think of yourself as being a spiritual person but do not belong to a specific religion, you are certainly not alone. Many of us feel unable to suspend our own critical thinking and simply believe everything that a religion tells us. Yet we cannot shake the conviction that there is a spiritual truth out there. The rise of the nuns. Being spiritual but not religious may be the largest single belief group in many countries around the world. In the UK, for example, the annual British Social Attitudes Survey has found a majority, 90%, of people ticking the no religion box every year since 2009. But yet a 2022 report published by Theos found that only 51% of these nuns, no religion, say that they don't believe in God. That leads 49% of nuns, representing over a quarter of the total adult population who do not belong to a religion, but do believe in God. The spiritual but not religious category may be even larger than that, if you also include people who do not believe in God, but do believe in some other kind of spiritual reality. I think it is great that so many people want to think for themselves and are not willing to let go of their own personal convictions about what is right and wrong to follow what they are told, simply on the basis of an appeal to authority shrouded in the mists of history. But at the same time, being spiritual but not religious is not always an easy path. It doesn't need to be that way. You can be spiritual but not religious, and yet have a single framework through which to evaluate new ideas yourself, and a common language through which to discuss spiritual ideas with others and come to a shared understanding. One such framework with a long and venerable history is the Perennial Philosophy. The golden thread of truth. Wikipedia defines the Perennial Philosophy as a perspective in philosophy and spirituality that views religious traditions as sharing a single metaphysical truth or origin from which all knowledge and doctrine has grown. Personally, I would give it a much broader definition. Yes, it includes this grand idea that there is a single perfect spiritual truth, and that all of the world's religions are just faint echoes of this one true message. This idea that the original inspiration for all of these diverse traditions was the same, and that their many differences come only from the way that cultural and linguistic factors can influence how an idea and its implications are formulated, interpreted, and expressed, all from the different needs and intellectual environments of the places and times that they come from. But on a much smaller and more modest scale, it can simply be the idea that many traditional religious and spiritual teachings do contain some truths, whatever their source and whatever else they are mixed in with. That these truths are often common to many religious and spiritual teachings, and that you can tease out these truths and come to a greater understanding of them by comparing different religious teachings and looking for things they have in common. The Perennialist school of comparative religion. There are two schools of comparative religion. The first and most common today is mostly concerned with documenting different religious beliefs and practices, and its students are very careful not to make value judgments. They evaluate and describe religious beliefs and practices on their own terms and in relation to others that they coexist with, comparing one with another only to tease out and understand the differences and distinctions. They document what others believe while being careful not to, at least in their work, formulate or express any beliefs of their own in order to remain objective. In a sense, they have taken the pure science approach. The applied science branch of comparative religion seeks to use their toolkit for a purpose, to tease out the truth from religion. The most famous adherent to this perennialist school of comparative religion was, and this may surprise you, the famous science fiction writer Aldous Huxley. Huxley is generally considered to have been responsible for popularizing the term perennial philosophy in the first place, and wrote a book by the same name. It's well worth a read. I might write a review of it at some point. Carl Jung and the Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious. Another great example of this idea of a golden thread of truth connecting world religions is the work of 20th century psychologist Carl Jung. Jung is not so often associated with the idea of the perennial philosophy as is comparative religion itself, but yet, at the same time, I am not the first to make this connection. Jung's work began from his observation that the myths and religious stories of many different cultures which existed in vastly different times and places, shared many common themes, characters, and narrative components. He noted that this was true even in isolated cultures and other cases where there was no reasonable possibility of direct or indirect communication between them. He then began to see many of these same common themes cropping up again and again in the dreams of his patients. As a result of this, he came up with his theory of the collective unconscious, the idea of a common layer to the mind populated by archetypal characters. While this is primarily a psychological theory, it did give birth to the process of individuation, which Jung believed could be practiced by healthy individuals for growth and self-improvement, as well as to treat mental illnesses. Jung also wrote about many esoteric subjects such as spiritual alchemy, Aleister Crowley, and the spiritual filing cabinet. One final example of the myriad ways in which the basic idea behind the perennial philosophy has manifested itself is in the writings of the infamous occultist Aleister Crowley. Crowley famously described the concept of the Tree of Life from the Jewish mystical tradition of Kabbalah as being like a spiritual filing cabinet. The Tree of Life is a system which divides reality up into 10 spheres and 22 paths connecting them. This is supposed to be a fractal system which holds true at any level. So God is composed of all 10 spheres and 22 paths, but so is the universe, and so are we humans. Crowley believed that this could be used as a system of classification for all spiritual truths and experiences, and set about accomplishing this through tables of correspondences in which he grouped together Egyptian gods and goddesses, Christian virtues, occult symbols, Buddhist meditations, and a whole lot more besides in these various categories. The point of doing so was not to suggest that they were exactly the same, but that each element within a particular category shared a common truth, some aspect of common purpose, and by studying these commonalities, that truth could be teased out.